So today I chose 5 winners and 5 losers to cover in today's video, where I'm going to be covering who I think has had a really good offseason so far, including the draft and free agency and trades, and who I think have had a bad offseason when it comes to those exact same things. I've chosen 5 for each. I'm going to start with winners, and first off, I got the Chicago Bulls. Man, I have loved how they've approached this offseason, getting gifted that number 4. Obviously, they'd probably want 1, 2, or 3, but man, 4 in this kind of draft class is still pristine talent. They went out and got Caleb Wilson, did not overthink it. They got who they wanted. After so many years of having just little talent or chasing mediocrity, they finally kind of have a direction. Yeah, they're not going to be going for a championship this year, but they're also not going to be bottom of the standings, I don't think. They are going to be going for that playing spot, but not in a way of like, man, here we are again of mediocrity, but a group of like younger guys was mixed with some veterans that's going to grow these younger guys together. Caleb Wilson, Modest Buzelis, Josh Giddey, and in the draft they also got Dalen Swain at number 15, who I've only heard good things about. As someone who doesn't watch a ton of college basketball, I just kind of do a little bit of research on these guys going into the draft. Dalen Swain is one of those just solid looking guys who can come into the Chicago Bulls and just be pretty impactful and just build around guys like him, Modest Buzelis, and of course Caleb Wilson. They went out and got Norman Powell on a pretty good contract, who's a very good scorer, was an all-star last year, and you can just put that around a guy like Modest Buzelis and Caleb Wilson in them, and even Dalen Swain, and just have a guy who can alleviate some pressure offensively from them, but also help them too, not just completely take the ball away from them, but just help them open up the court for them. A guy like Norman Powell can do that. And they also went and got Nick Claxton for what seemed like almost nothing. So that starting 5 group looks very decent with Josh Giddey, Norman Powell, Modest Buzelis, Caleb Wilson, and Nick Claxton. That is a very solid group of guys with a decent bench, like I said, Dalen Swain as well. That's just a very solid group of guys who can definitely compete for a playing spot and maybe even a playoff spot. And another thing I like what the Chicago Bulls did this offseason, not player-wise, but coaching-wise, they went out and got Tiago Splitter, who had a great year with the Trailblazers, all things considered, with the Chauncey Billups situation, and was able to build the young guys up, but also have this team go on a playoff run, go through the playing game and into the playoffs, and take a game from the second-seeded Spurs. That is a win if you're a coach who was thrown into this season on crazy circumstances. So if I'm the Bulls, I love the coaching decision, I love the drafting, and I love what they got in free agency and in trades and whatever. So I really do like a lot, maybe everything of what the Chicago Bulls did this offseason going into next year. Next up, I have the Philadelphia 76ers, who, of course, I've talked about the Philadelphia 76ers to death, what it feels like, but man, it's just been so good for what they've been able to do. They traded off what was thought to be one of the worst contracts in the NBA with Paul George, and in return got a MVP candidate last year and a Finals MVP just a couple years back, and that alone is unbelievable. That alone would get them on this list, but they didn't stop there. They also got a guy like Anthony Simons who can come off the bench and be an offensive punch for them when Tyrese Maxey's out or whoever's out. And they also got Dean Wade to fill out that starting 5. And in the draft, LeBaron Philon fell to them at 22. And I just really like everything that they did. They filled out their roster. The bench can use a little bit more work, but they really just did fill out that roster. And I think this team is fully geared up for a finals run next year. Another winner I have on here is the San Antonio Spurs. Coming off of a near championship level season, the Western Conference Finals champs, they had a young age to fall back on and just say, hey, let's just run it back. I mean, we're young, we're going to get better. But they didn't just do that. They got better in a lot of ways, including signing Tobias Harris for a pretty decent contract, which was by far their worst position on the team, the power forward spot, and getting Tobias Harris, who can put up a decent 15 a night for you and alleviate pressure off of Wemby, Castle, Fox, Dylan Harper, can just be that pressure release. When the offense might be struggling, he can be that pressure release of a 3 in the corner, a mid-range, a post-up fade. He can get to his spot whenever if you do need a bucket in a tough spot. Obviously, he's not going to be the number 1, 2, or even 3 option offensively. He might be that 4th option, but having Tobias there as a 4th offensive option is very good. He's a big body as well. They struggled rebounding wise, and he can help that pretty decently. Defensively, he's not going to help too much, but I think you can get away with that when you do have the reigning defensive player of the year as your center. Another weakness for them was when Wemby would get out the game, that defense would struggle interior wise, and they went out and got in the draft Terrace Reed, and also Jaden Quaintance, who, when he's healthy, looked really good in college. So if he can get healthy, which this medical staff is really good at dissecting players and their health and getting them ready for the games, this team, if they get Jaden Quaintance fully healthy and what we saw in college when he was fully healthy, is even going to be scarier. Terrace Reed can just be a big body coming off the bench, and I really do like just getting Jaden Quaintance at number 20 in the draft. Just like, if you're a championship team like the Spurs are, championship level team, you can take a shot on a guy like Jaden Quaintance, who might turn out to be a stud for you down the line. So yeah, I really enjoy what the Spurs did this offseason. They could have sat in their hands and just ran it back with the same group. They're young, why not run it back? But they didn't do that. They are not wasting the prime and the rise of Wemby in this league. They're going to take every year like it is a possible year for a championship. So I like what they're doing, and they re-signed Julian Champagnie on a pretty good contract as well, like very good value for what he brings. And they are soon, if not already by the time this video is uploaded, going to re-sign Wemby to that rookie max extension. Another winner on here, I've loved what they've done so far as well, the Utah Jazz. Getting Darren Peterson alone makes this a great offseason for them, especially when you look at how great he has been in Summer League. He has been incredible, by far the best player in Summer League so far. I know they say don't overreact to Summer League, but I'm also not going to underreact to Summer League. Like, Darren Peterson has been a stud so far, and he does not look like a rookie out there, putting up, I think, like 25 a night, and also showing very good playmaking chops. And last year in college, I don't believe his playmaking was one of the big highlights of his game. It was there, but it wasn't a highlight. Like, it wasn't part of the best of his game. It was mostly his scoring. But man, his playmaking looks so good and so NBA ready, especially when you look at a point guard coming into the league. Those point guards struggle when it comes to holding onto the ball and playmaking and everything. And that still might happen for Darren Peterson, but he does have the game sense of a playmaker, and that is great for the Utah Jazz to have their possible and highly likely franchise point guard. But on top of getting Darren Peterson, they also were able to get Walker Kessler to LA and finally find that desperate team who was desperate enough to trade everything to them for Walker Kessler. And man, did that pay off. That patience really did help the Utah Jazz, because they were able to get 2 first-round picks unprotected and 2 first-round pick swaps, basically emptying out the Lakers of their draft capital for the foreseeable future. And I just love that for Utah. They were able to capitalize on Walker Kessler's value and also the Lakers' desperation. So yeah, I love what the Jazz have done this offseason, building a pretty decent team for Darren Peterson to lead next year with Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ace Bailey and all them. Like, this team is going to be very solid. I can definitely see them trying to make that playing spot, maybe sneaking in there, really. The last one up I have for the winners, and this is no particular order as well, just listing them off, but for the last one on here for the winners, I do have the Los Angeles Clippers. In that Kawhi deal, they were able to get a solid wing in Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, who, why not take a shot on someone like that who is losing rotational minutes in Toronto? Why not see what he can do in a new environment? Maybe it is something like an environment switch that can get Grady Dick back to what we saw his rookie year and in college. And they were able to get 2 unprotected first-round picks and a first-round pick swap. They are completely loaded when it comes to draft capital right now. And on top of all of that, they also were able to go out and get Rui Hachimura on a very good deal, and also got Keen Wagler at number 5 in the draft. I know a lot of people were kind of mixed on that pick, but we got to dial it back a little bit. This pick wasn't even supposed to be theirs. This was Indiana's pick that was traded to them, but it was top 5 protected, and Indiana was one of the worst teams in the league this year with the Halliburton injury. So they weren't even really supposed to get this pick. This was all shaping up to be the Pacers pick, and they were able to get Keen Wagler at number 5. So they built a very solid lineup out of what was going to be a disaster with the Kawhi trade, possibly losing the gamble of getting that pick in the Zubac trade from Indiana, possibly not even getting that pick, but they did get the pick. They did get pretty decent value for Kawhi, even though he's going into his last year on his deal, and they built a very solid lineup around Wagler because they went out and got Rui Hachimura and Brandon Ingram. So their lineup looks like Darius Garland, Keen Wagler, Brandon Ingram, Rui Hachimura, and Brook Lopez. Now, that's not a crazy lineup. They're not going to go out and be a top 6 seed, but it's just a solid lineup to build around your young guy and maybe build up some value for a guy like Brandon Ingram, who you might be able to trade midseason or something, or maybe a younger guy guy or more draft capital or something like that, or use your draft capital to go out and get someone that you might like. So I just like what the Clippers are doing. They have a lot of options. They have a solid lineup to go into next year just to compete, just to not be bad. Like, you don't want to be bottom of the barrel anymore, especially with the new lottery rules and everything. So with the Clippers, I have really enjoyed what they did, even if they got rid of Kawhi. So now onto the losers, and this is one of the most obvious ones, I think, and this is the New Orleans Pelicans. For a team that went 26-56, was the 11th seed, and has a lot of valuable players on their team, you would expect them to do something, get better, make a push into the playing game that you were one seed behind, build around or retool around a guy like Derek Queen or Zion or something. But all they have done is re-signed a 37-year-old DeAndre Jordan, and that's it. No notable re-signings, signings, draft picks, because their draft pick was traded to the Atlanta Hawks for that Derek Queen trade last offseason. So no notable draft picks, offseason pickups, or anything. They haven't even done a trade. They haven't traded Trey Murphy after all the rumors. They haven't traded Yves Missi after there was a bunch of rumors that the Knicks wanted him very badly. But apparently the Pelicans viewed him as untouchable. Like, just weird decisions from the Pelicans that have held them back from doing anything, from getting good draft capital, from competing possibly. They are just staying the same, and what that got them last year was a 26-56 record. I don't know what their plan is. Next up as a loser, I do have the Los Angeles Lakers on here. That Walker Kessler deal is a big part of it. The contract itself isn't terrible. I'm fine with them giving a lot of money to Walker Kessler. That's fine. But the deal itself to the Utah Jazz was just way too much. Way too desperate of a deal. One of the more desperate deals in this offseason was this Kessler deal, because they basically unloaded all their draft capital to the Utah Jazz, and that's maybe for a top 15 center in the league. Like, Walker Kessler is there. He might be a top 15 center next year just because playing alongside Luka is that great for centers and lob catchers and everything like that. But without Luka, Walker Kessler is maybe a top 15 center in the league. I literally think he might be 16 or 17. And you give up that much draft capital, and even past the Walker Kessler deal, which was just way too desperate of a deal for them. They also lost LeBron James, they lost Marcus Smart, they lost Luke Kennard, they lost Rui Hachimura, they lost Jackson Hayes, they lost DeAndre Ayton, and they just overhauled the roster with just decent players. They signed Mamu and Quinn Grimes and Colin Sexton, all those guys, but just nothing to the level that they were before. And defensively, the roster still stinks. Like, this roster is not a good defensive roster. Offensively, they can be very good. With Luka running the show and signing back Austin Reeves, again, another negative. That Austin Reeves deal is too large for a guy like Austin Reeves. I understand he is valuable to this team, but Austin Reeves is not a player that is just a perfect fit alongside a guy like Luka. So this team is just an offensive-minded team with very little defense. If you take Walker Kessler out of this team, this is one of the worst defenses in the entire league. And man, do Lakers fans pray that Luka does not get hurt at all. Even just like, not a season-ending injury, just like bangs and bruises throughout the year that might keep him out maybe like 15, 20 games. Those games that he's going to miss are going to be bad for the Lakers. There might be a few in there where Austin Reeves wills them far enough into a win, but majority of the time, this team without Luka is going to look really nasty. And I just got a notification from Shams right now that the Lakers went out and signed Kevon Looney. Again, that's a solid player, I guess, as a backup center, but that does not help you defensively. Another signing that does not help you defensively. I get it. You got to fill out your roster. You got to get that backups big. But again, it just doesn't help you defensively. The Lakers should know that if you want to win a championship, you do have to be great at defense. You can't just be an offensive juggernaut and win. And I still don't even think this team is going to be a great offensive juggernaut. I think they can be a good offensive team, but they're not going to be like top of the league, I don't think. And if this is the team that you are building around Luka and you're trying to show Luka that we want you to stay here long term, this is the team we're going to give you so you can compete, I don't know if this does it for Luka. So if this is what they have to offer, I don't know if we even see Luka in LA for a very long time. Next up on the losers, I do have the Boston Celtics. This is purely because of the aspirations they went in to this offseason. They were pairing Tatum and Giannis. That was the main thing. Everyone knew it. Everyone saw the rumors. They wanted to get Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they were going to deal out Jaylen Brown for him, and it never fell through. They never wanted to give up Hugo Gonzalez was what was coming out, who the Celtics were very hesitant on putting in the deal. And now they had to settle for, instead of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Paul George, and they still had to give up Jaylen Brown for it. So Paul George, they got one of the worst contracts in the league, and they didn't even get that great of draft capital in return for what they could have gotten with what Philly actually has as draft capital. So they got a bad contract in Paul George. Not saying Paul George is bad, but a bad contract, and they had to give up their Finals MVP and MVP candidate last year up for Paul George. Decent draft capital, not great draft capital, especially for what they could have gotten. And you're just left with what could have been Giannis, and now it's Paul George. Them being on this list doesn't mean they're going to be bad either, by the way. I do think the Celtics are still going to be a very good team, but this is just a very disappointing, to say the least, offseason for them. Next up, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right before recording this video earlier this morning, it was announced that the Cavs gave Donovan Mitchell a unbelievably huge contract, $273 million for 4 years. The last year of that deal being a player option, which he's more than certain going to take, which was $75 million in that 1 year. That contract alone is an insane amount of money, and in my opinion, that should be reserved for players that will lead you to a championship, and that is it. They are able to lead you to a championship. Not that they have before, but you are certain that they can lead you there. And we have never seen Donovan Mitchell show that he can truly lead a team to the finals. Last year was his first time in the conference finals, and he got swept embarrassingly. And that is not to just dog on Donovan Mitchell. I do like his game, but it's just too much money, and that's going to pigeonhole the Cavs and what they can do later on. And shout out to Donovan Mitchell for getting that money, but just on the court wise, this is going to pigeonhole the front office of the Cavs tremendously as his contract kicks in, for what they're able to go out and do with getting new players and everything. They lost Dean Wade, and they haven't really added anyone of value either through free agency. They're rumored to get LeBron. I've also seen rumored for Jonathan Kuminga, but if they just run this team back in the East that's only getting better, that is going to be a huge mistake, and they're just going to probably fall in the standings. They were the 4th seed this year. In this East, they might fall to 5 or 6 if I'm being honest. Last up in the losers, the final one of the video, I have the Portland Trail Blazers. This team made one of the most brain-scratching, brain-dead, no clue what the heck they're doing trades I have seen in a long time. The Ja Morant trade, I truly don't know what the point of it was. They were set up pretty well after coming off this year. They had some guys with value, some young guys that played good. And then they go out and trade for a guy like Ja Morant. That's such a random trade for me, and especially in a backcourt that they had such depth in, with Damian Lillard coming back this year, Scoot Henderson, who played really good in flashes and had a very good playoff game last year against the San Antonio Spurs, a 30-point playoff game, and they have Denny Avdia, who's not a guard, but he is a primary ball handler, and then Drew Holiday. All these guys are primary ball handlers, and even throwing Shaedon Sharpe in there, all these guys are guards or primary ball handlers, and then they go out and trade for Ja Morant on top of all that. This is like something you see in 2K, and not in the good way. Like, this is just not a very well crafted team at all. This just seems like just throwing something at the wall until it works, and this is not gonna work. I can see it now. It's not gonna work. You cannot just throw talent together and say it's gonna work. Defensively, this team isn't guarding nobody in the perimeter, with Ja Morant and Damian Lillard playing with each other, which was what was coming out after the trade. They do look to play Dame and Ja together, which is just so mind-boggling. And when you put that together with Denny at the 3, who is this team guarding? They are guarding nobody on the perimeter. I know they have pretty good wing defenders, but when you have to guard those guards, the Steph Currys, the Anthony Edwards, the Luka Doncic's, the Jalen Brunsons, you have to have a good guard defense, and if not, they are going to attack those guards. You have Damian Lillard, Denny Avdia, Ja Morant now. They're going to attack them, and that's what happens when you just look for the big names and who might bring people into the seats, but in the long run and on the court, this just makes zero sense. Another negative about what they did this offseason was that whole Thiago splitter fiasco of the Blazers not wanting to give him enough money, and he was very good, all things considered, like I mentioned earlier, for the Portland Trail Blazers, and they didn't even want to pay him enough money. The ownership being cheap once again, getting in the way of the Portland Trail Blazers. And this time they had to go out and sign Micah Nori, who was, I believe that's how you say his name, who was the Timberwolves assistant for a good while now, since I think 2021. I mean, he might be a fine coach for them, but I mean, just for the cohesion of the team, this is going to be their third head coach in 2 seasons, with Chauncey last year, then Tiago, and then Micah this coming up season. And that's just not good for a team, especially a team that's trying to find an identity. That is just, I just don't like at all what the Trailblazers did this offseason. So that does it with me. Y'all let me know if you are a fan of any of these teams, and if you agree, disagree, let me know down in the comments below. I want to know what y'all think, or if not, if you're not a fan of any of these teams, let me know what you think of these deals, or let me know if you think your team should be on here, a winner or a loser. Let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell, so you can be notified as soon as I upload, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.